Book 2, Canto 2, The Legend of Sir Guyon. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Morgan Scorpion. The Faerie Queene by Edmund Spenser, Book 2, The Legend of Sir Guyon, Canto 2. Babe's bloody hands may not be cleansed, the face of golden mien, her sisters to extremities strive her to banish clean. Thus when Sir Guyon with his faithful guide had with due rites and dolorous lament the end of their sad tragedy uptide, the little babe up in his arms he hent, who with sweet pleasance and bold blandishment gan smile on them, that rather ought to weep, as careless of his woe, or innocent of that was doen, that ruth empierced deep in that knight's heart, and words with bitter tears did steep. Ah, luckless babe, born under cruel star, and in dead parents' baleful ashes bred, full little weenest thou what sorrows are left thee for portion of thy livelihood. Poor orphan in the wild world scattered, as budding branch rent from the native tree, and thrown forth till it be withered. Such is the state of men, thus enter we into this life with woe, and end with misery. Then soft himself inclining on his knee, down to that well did in the water weene, so loved as loth disdainful nicety, his guilty hands from bloody gore to clean, he washed them oft and oft, yet nought they been for all his washing cleaner. Still he strove, yet still the little hands were bloody seen, the which him into great amazement drove, and into diverse doubt his wavering wonder clove. He wist not whether blot of foul offence might not be purged with water nor with bath, or that high God, in lieu of innocence, imprinted had that token of his wrath, to shew how sore blood guiltiness he hateth, or that the charm and venom which they drunk, their blood with secret filth infected hath, being diffused through the senseless trunk, that through the great contagion direfully deadly stunk. Whom thus at gaze, the palmer gan to board with godly reason, and thus fair bespake: Ye been right hard amated, gracious Lord, and of your ignorance great marvel make, whilst cause not well conceived ye mistake, but know, that secret virtues are infused in every fountain and in every lake, which who hath skill them rightly to have choosed, to proof of passing wonders hath full often used. But those some were so far from their source endued, by great Dame Nature, from whose fruitful pap their wellheads spring, and are with moisture dewed, which feeds each living plant with liquid sap, and fills with flowers fair Flora's painted lap. But other some by gift of later grace, or by good prayers, or by other hap, had virtue poured into their waters base, and thenceforth were renowned, and sought from place to place. Such is this well, wrought by occasion strange, which to her nymph befell upon a day, as she the woods with bow and shafts did range, the heartless hind and roebuck to dismay. Dan Faunus chanced to meet her by the way, and kindling fire at her fair burning eye, inflamed was to follow beauty's chace, and chased her, that fast from him did fly, as hind from her, so she fled from her enemy. At last, when failing breath began to faint, and saw no means to scape, of shame afraid, to set her down to weep for sore constraint, and to Diana calling loud for aid, her dear besought, to let her die a maid. The goddess heard, and sudden where she sate, welling out streams of tears, and quite dismayed, with stony fear of that rude rustic mate, transformed her to a stone from steadfast virgin state. Lo, now she is that stone, from whose two heads, as from two weeping eyes, fresh streams do flow. Yet cold through fear and old conceived dreads, and yet the stone her semblance seems to show, shaped like a maid, that such she may her know, and yet her virtues in her water bide, for it is chaste and pure as purest snow, nor lets her waves with any filth be dyed, but ever like herself unstained hath been tried. From thence it comes, that this babe's bloody hand may not be cleansed with water of this well, nor certes, sir, strive you it to withstand, but let them still be bloody, as befell, that they his mother's innocence may tell, as she bequeathed in her last testament, that as a sacred symbol it may dwell in her son's flesh, to mind revengement, and be for all chaste dames an endless monument. He hearkened to his reason, and the child uptaking to the palmer gave to bear. But his sad fathers armes with blood defiled, and heavy load himself did lightly reare, and turning to that place, in which whilere he left his lofty steed with golden selle, and goodly gorgeous barbs, him found not there. By other accident, that erft befell, he is convayed, but how or where, here fits not tell. Which when Sir Guyon saw, all were he wroth, yet algates mote he soft himself appease, and fairly fare on foot, however loth, his double burden did him sore disease. So long they travelled with little ease, till at last they to a castle came, built on a rock adjoyning to the seas. It was an ancient work of antique fame, and wondrous strong by nature, and by skilfull frame. Therein 3 sisters dwelt of sundry sort, the children of one sire by mothers 3, who, dying whilome did divide this fort, to them by equal shares in equal fee. But strifeful mind and diverse quality drew them in parts, and each made others foe. Still did they strive, and daily disagree. The eldest did against the youngest go, and both against the middest meant to worken woe. Where, when the knight arrived, he was right well received, as knight of so much worth became. Of second sister, who did far excell the other 2, Medina was her name, a sober, sad, and comely courteous dame, who rich arrayed, and yet in modest guise in goodly garments, that her well became, fair marching forth in honourable wise, him at the threshold met, and well did enterprize. She led him up into a goodly bower, and comely courted with meet modesty, nor in her speech, nor in her haviour, was lightness seen, or looser vanity, but gracious womanhood, and gravity, above the reason of her youthly years. Her golden locks she roundly did uptie in braided trammels, that no looser hairs did out of order stray about her dainty ears. Whilst she herself thus busily did frame, seemly to entertain her new come guest, news hereof to her other sisters came, who all this while were at their wanton rest, a-courting each her friend with lavish fest. There were 2 knights of peerless presence, and famous far abroad for warlike guest, which to these ladies love did countenance, and to his mistress each himself strove to advance. He that made love unto the eldest dame was hight Sir Hudibras, an hardy man, yet not so good of deeds as great of name, which he by many rash adventures won. Since errant armes to so he first began, more huge in strength than wise in works he was, and reason with full hardies overran. Stern melancholy did his courage pass, and was for terror more, all armed in shining brass. But he that loved the youngest was Sansloy, he that fair Una late foul outraged, the most unruly, and the boldest boy, that ever warlike weapons menaged, and to all lawless lust encouraged, through strong opinion of his matchless might, nor aught he cared whom he endamaged by tortious wrong, or whom bereaved of right. He now this lady's champion chose for love to fight. These 2 gay knights, vowed to so diverse loves, each other does envy with deadly hate, and daily war against his foeman moves, in hopes to win more favour with his mate, and the other's pleasing service to abate, to magnify his own. But when they heard how in that place strange knight arrived late, both knights and ladies forth right angry fared, and fiercely unto battle stern themselves prepared. But ere they could proceed unto the place where he abode, themselves at discord fell, and cruel combat joined in middle space, with horrible assault and fury fell. They heaped huge strokes, the scorned life to quell, that all on uproar from her settled seat, the house was raised, and all that in did dwell, seemed that loud thunder with amazement great, did rend the rattling skies with flames of fouldering heat. The noise thereof call'th forth that stranger knight, to weet what dreadful thing was there in hand. Where, when as 2 brave knights in bloody fight with deadly rancour he enraged fond, his sun-broad shield about his rest he bond, and shining blade unsheathed, with which he ran unto that stead their strife to understond, and at his first arrival them began with goodly means to pacify well as he can. But they him spying, both with greedy force attunce upon him ran, and him beset with strokes of mortal steel without remorse, and on his shield like iron sledges bet, as when a bear and tiger being met in cruel fight on Lybic ocean wide, espy a traveller with feats abet, whom they in equal prey hope to divide, they stint their strife, and him assail on every side. But he, not like a weary traveller, their sharp assault right boldly did rebut, and suffered not their blowes to bite him near, but with redoubled buffs them back did put, whose grieved minds with choler did englut, against themselves turning their wrathful spite, gan with new rage their shields to hew and cut. But still when Guyon came to part their fight, with heavy load on him they freshly gan to smite, as a tall ship tossed in troublous seas, whom raging winds threatening to make the prey of the rough rocks, do diversly disease, meets two contrary billows by the way, that her on either side to soar assay, and boast to swallow her in greedy grave. She, scorning both their spites, doth make wide way, and with her breast breaking the foamy wave, doth ride on both their backs, and fair herself doth save. So boldly he him bears, and rusheth forth between them both. By conduct of his blade, wondrous great prowess and heroic worth he shewed that day, and rare ensample made, when two so mighty warriors he dismayed. At once he wards and strikes, he takes and pays, now forced to yield, now forcing to invade, before, behind, and round about him lays, so double was his pains, so double be his praise. Strange sort of fight, 3 valiant knights to see, 3 combats joyn in one, and two do reign a triple war with triple enmity, all for their ladies froward love to gain, which gotten was but hate. So love does reign in stoutest minds, and maketh monstrous war. He maketh war, he maketh peace again, and yet his peace is but continual jar. O miserable men, that to him subject are. Whilst thus they mingled were in furious arms, the fair Medina with her tresses torn, and naked breast in pity of their harms amongst them ran, and falling them beform, besought them by the womb which them had borne, and by the loves which were to them most dear, and by the knighthood, which they sure had sworn their deadly cruel discord to forbear, and to her just conditions of fair peace to hear. But her 2 other sisters standing by her loud gainsayned, and both their champions bad pursue the end of their strong enmity, as ever of their loves they would be glad. Yet she with pithy words and counsel sad still strove their stubborn rages to revoke, that at the last suppressing fury mad, they gan abstain from dint of direful stroke, and hearken to the sober speeches which she spoke. Ah, puissant lords, what cursed evil sprite, or fail Erinnys in your noble hearts, her hellish brond hath kindled with despite, and stirred you up to work your wilful smarts? Is this the joy of arms? Be these the parts of glorious knighthood after blood to thrust, and not regard due right and just deserts? Vain is the vaunt, and victory unjust, that more to mighty hands them rightful cause doth trust. And were there rightful cause of difference, yet were not better fair it to accord, than with blood guiltiness to heap offence, and mortal vengeance join to crime abhorred? O fly from wrath, fly, O my leafless lord! Sad be the sights and bitter fruits of war, and 1,000 furies wait on wrathful sword. Nor aught the praise of prowess more doth mar, than foul revenging rage, and base contentious jar. But lovely concord, and most sacred peace doth nourish virtue, and fast friendship breeds. Weak she makes strong, and strong thing doth increase, till it the pitch of highest praise exceeds. Brave be her wars, and honourable deeds, by which she triumphs over ire and pride, and wins an olive girland for her meeds. Be therefore, O my dear lords, pacified, and this misseeming discord meekly lay aside. Her gracious words their rancour did appall, and sunk so deep into their boiling breasts, that down they let their cruel weapons fall, and lowly did abase their lofty crests to her fair presence, and discreet behests. Then she began a treaty to procure, and stablished terms betwixt both their requests, that as a law for ever should endure, which to observe in word of knights they did assure. Which to confirm, and fast to bind their league, after their weary sweat and bloody toil, she them besought, during their quiet trigue, into her lodgings to repair a while, to rest themselves, and grace to reconcile. They soon consent so forth with her they fare, where they are well received, and made to spoil themselves of soiled arms, and to prepare their minds to pleasure, and their mouths to dainty fare. And these two froward sisters, their fair loves came with them eke, all were they wondrous loth and feigned cheer, as for the time behoves, but could not colour yet so well the troth, but that their natures bad appeared in both. For both did at their second sister grutch, and inly grieve, as doth an hidden moth the inner garment fret, not the utter touch. One thought their cheer too little, the other thought too much. Elissa, so the eldest hight, did deem such entertainment base, nor aught would eat, nor aught would speak, but evermore did seem as discontent for want of mirth or meat. No solace could her paramour entreat her once to show, nor court nor dalliance, but with bent lowring brows, as she would threat, she scowled, and frowned with froward countenance, unworthy of fair ladies' comely governance. But young Perissa was of other mind, full of disport, still laughing, loosely light, and quite contrary to her sister's kind. No measure in her mood, no rule of right, but poured out in pleasure and delight. In wine and meats she flowed above the bank, and in excess exceeded her own might. In sumptuous tire she joyed herself to prank, but of her love too lavish, little have she thank. Fast by her side did the bold Sansloy, fit mate for such a mincing minion, who in her looseness took exceeding joy, might not be found a franker Frannion of her lewd parts to make companion. But Hudibras, more like a malcontent, did see and grieve at his bold fashion, hardly could he endure his hardiment, yet still he sat, and inly did himself torment. Betwixt them both the fair Medina sate, with sober grace and goodly carriage. With equal measure she did moderate the strong extremities of their outrage. That forward pair she ever would assuage, when they would strive due reason to exceed, but that same froward twain would accourage, and of her plenty add unto their need. So kept she them in order, and herself in heed. Thus fairly she attempered her feast, and pleased them all with meet satiety. At last, when lust of meat and drink was ceased, she Guyon dear besought of courtesy, to tell from whence he came through jeopardy, and whither now on new adventure bound, who with bold grace and comely gravity, drawing to him the eyes of all around, from lofty siege began these words aloud to sound. This thy demand, lady, doth revive fresh memory in me of that great Queene, great and most glorious Virgin Queene alive, that with her sovereign power and sceptre sheene, all Faerie land doth peaceably susteene. In widest ocean she her throne doth rear, though over all the earth it may be seene, as morning sun her beames dispreaden clear, and in her face fair peace and mercy doth appear. In her the riches of all heavenly grace in chief degree are heaped up on high, and all that else this world's enclosure base hath great or glorious in mortal eye, adorns the person of her Majesty, that men beholding so great excellence and rare perfection in mortality, do her adore with sacred reverence, as the idol of her Maker's great magnificence. To her I homage and my service owe, in number of the noblest knights on ground, mongst whom on me she deigned to bestow order of maidenhead, the most renowned, that may this day in all the world be found. And yearly solemn feast she wants to make, the day that first doth lead the year around, to which all knights of worth and courage bold resort, to hear of strange adventures to be told. There this old palmer shewed himself that day, and to the mighty Princess did complain of grievous mischiefs, which a wicked fay had wrought, and many whelmed in deadly pain, whereof he craved redress. My Sovereign, whose glory is in gracious deeds, and joys throughout the world her mercy to maintain, eftsoons devised redress for such annoys, me all unfit for so great purpose she employs. Now hath fair Phoebe with her silver face thrice seen the shadows of the nether world, sith last I left that honourable place, in which her royal presence is enthralled. Nor ever shall I rest in house nor hold, till I that false Acrasia have won, of whose foul deeds, too hideous to be told, I witness am, and this their wretched Sonne, Whofe wofull parents she hath wickedly fordone. Tell on, faire Sir, fayd fhe, that dolefull tale, From which fad ruth does feeme you to reftraine, That we may pitty fuch unhappy bale, And learne from pleafures poyfon to abftaine. Ill by enfample good doth often gaine. Then forward he his purpofe gan purfew, And told the ftory of the mortall paine, Which Mordaunt and Amavia did rew, As with lamenting eyes himfelfe did lately vew. Nigh was farre fpent, and now in Ocean deepe Orion, flying faft from hissing Snake, His flaming head did haften for to fteepe, When of his piteous tale he end did make. Whilft with delight of that he wifely fpake, Thofe guefts beguiled, did beguile their eyes Of kindly fleepe, that did them overtake. At laft, when they had markt the changed fkies, They wift their houre was fpent them each to reft him hies. End of Canto II, Book II. The Legend of Sir Guyon.